everyone, and welcome to our Valentine's Day episode of Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. And so with that, would like to formally bring on our guest for today, Paulina Cecula, who is the co-founder at Dama Health. Welcome, Paulina. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and happy Valentine's, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day. I think maybe a great way to kick off the conversation, Paulina, is if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Dama Health.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a medical doctor by background, now a co-founder of Dama Health. We're a very early stage startup based between London and Boston, Philly, New York, travel back and forth, and basically in a big vision to personalize prescribing in female health, which I'll tell you all about in a second.
That is incredible. And I think maybe just to even kick off with your own background, starting kind of as a medical doctor, was there anything that really motivated you to make this transition from medical doctor to entrepreneur kind of within this field of women's health, specifically in the context of Dama?
Yes, absolutely. And probably, honestly, the hardest decision and the best decision I ever made. But just to sort of give you a bit of context, I went to med school initially because I wanted to become like a global health doctor and wanted to contribute in that way to this like more impactful, what I thought, approach to medicine, like really wide scale impact and shifting from like reactive to preventative health. But then very quickly realized actually that the huge impact in innovation and medicine is going to be by using data, technology, AI to really reach that scale and really like create meaningful innovation. So I started getting involved with startups and really working with solutions that were exploring using AI in healthcare. But my passions were always women's health. I wanted to be like an OBGYN or maybe work in fertility. So then I just kind of combined the two. But it wasn't that like one day I woke up thinking like, let's start a startup. Like it was meeting the right people at the right time. So I was working on a project in contraception, and then I met my co-founder Elena and Dr. Alan Lazarus. I'll tell you about his work as well. And the three of us really bonded over this idea and the vision of precision medicine for women's health. And one thing led to another, we started working together. And then I worked in OBGYN for a bit and really made the decision on actually to just pursue Dama Health fully. So it was kind of like a transition. So it took a bit of a while, and actually just realization of this work is going to really align with my values and really back to this dream that I had at the very early stage when I applied to med school of like having a global health impact. I can actually do it by running a startup.
That is so incredible. And I mean, there's so much I want to unpack. And I love that, sometimes like what you said, it could be a kind of a hard transition, but the best transition. So I think that's just definitely a great like nugget of wisdom. I think before we kind of jump into Dama, the solution, and really what you three have been up to, maybe a good place to start is if you can talk a little bit more based off of your own experience, from a provider perspective, but just now what you're seeing, what are some of the challenges that women are facing within the contraceptive realm right now? Considering trial and error, the political climate, there's a lot of things that are going on. I would love if you could shed some light on what you've been seeing.
Yes, of course. And probably we could chat about this like for the whole panel, but really good that actually we're seeing women and physicians and also industry like getting more interested in this space, because we had modern contraceptive methods for like the last 60 years, and they had a huge positive impact on like reproductive autonomy, and then for many patients like PCOS patients that are really helping them manage their symptoms. But actually like since they were developed, we actually had a quite a stagnation in terms of new methods, innovation in the space. And recently we were really seeing the rates of unintended pregnancies. We have issues with access to abortion. So it's becoming really, really important to find the best contraceptive method that actually works for you. Because also, apart from the anecdotal evidence that we've been hearing from women over the last years, we actually now having evidence that people are having side effects and the impact of these side effects on the quality of life. So there's a huge need for like new methods and innovation in space that will actually meet the needs of modern society. And we don't have to say that, everyone is going to go on a pill. And like some people will want to use non-hormonal methods, some people want to use hormonal methods for different reasons. And just to explain the trial and error approach that you mentioned. So on average, people will try 3 to 4 different methods before finding the right one. And in the meantime, they very often suffer side effects such as bleeding problems, mental health problems, libido changes, like very difficult headaches as well. All of this impacts your relationships, your work, your life. And it's just a trial and error until you find the right one. And it's a trial and error for physicians too. Like there is nothing we can do to like, there is no test. There is nothing that we can predict to say, this patient is really going to react well to this drug or this method. So it's not just the pills, it's actually the whole spectrum of methods that we have this trial and error approach. And actually 1/3 of patients will stop in the first year of using a method, which then is also can really trickle down to this like really big problem of unintended pregnancies, which are the really risky ones. And very often people are just so upset and don't like it that they don't go back to the method, or they're just really like confused, like, what do I do next? Because I had a really horrible experience.
Definitely.
Because we now know that there is this significant variability. So, some friends will be like, I love my method. Like,
Yeah.
like, my IUD is amazing. I don't have periods. But for some people, that is an issue. So like we are seeing this big variability in response, and we just don't know why. Like there isn't enough science and data to show, people with like the symptoms or these conditions are going to react this way. So there is this big gap in really understanding like why people react so differently, which then leads to the trial and error, and then it just spirals. So luckily, actually, there's nonprofits, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, there's new startups that like, if, pharma hasn't really been developing so much in the last few years, but we're seeing this renowned like excitement and innovation coming from startups and nonprofits, which is really great to see.
That is so incredible. And I think just the fact of this kind of going in blind mentality, not only for patients, but also for physicians, I think really, really resonates. It is kind of something where just the options that we have available are not really serving both providers or patients when it comes to finding that best match, which I think is very on theme for Valentine's Day, funnily enough. Would kind of really love to understand, I mean, I think talking about just the landscape right now and just how difficult and kind of isolating it can be to find kind of that contraception method that really fits your lifestyle. How did you all come up with really the discoveries at Dama Health, thinking about like the personalization, the genetic components that you think through, and how does that, influence the overall mission of Dama Health as a whole?
Yes, of course. So Dama really started when my co-founder came across this pioneering research from University of Colorado. And it was Dr. Alan Lazovitz, who's working now very closely with us. He is a complex family OBGYN, and he was leading this research on pharmacogenetics of contraception. So he was studying how genetics impact our responses to these drugs. And he was actually studying implants very closely. And he discovered that genetics does play a role in how we respond to contraception and the variability in response to it. So he checked like the levels of hormones that people had on implants and compared to the genetic variability, and showed some differences, and also studied side effects. So he's found that differences in estrogen receptor 1 gene, for example, were linked with like the weight gain side effect, which is another one that was like, for a long time we were saying, like, oh, there isn't weight, because on average, like, on average, maybe there isn't a weight gain side effect. But when you look at individuals, like some people will have that side effect. So he's actually started to show that like genetics plays a role. And then we continued that research, and we did another study with more than 1,000 women, and again discovered novel variants that were specifically associated with risk of side effects. And this is just the start, right? Because we have found those associations, we need to validate them, but it's really exciting to see we can explain some of this. So this is where it all started, like really thinking, wow, like on the precision medicine level. And then we were thinking, like, if one day we could really personalize prescribing, like the right method, the right dose, the right formulation to the right patient, that would be like amazing. That's the goal. But then what do we do now? Like we realize like personalization of contraception is just so much more than just genetics. We have to think about the whole person, their lifestyle, their values, their goals, their medical history. So we are working on this now as well, because we've seen that in the data, like things like whether you have PMS or not also really matters to predicting whether you're going to have side effects. So that's what we are working on as well.
That is so incredible. And it's so interesting that there is a genetic component. I didn't expect that. Kind of wanted to, when you were talking a little bit more about the personalization, how all of these things kind of play such a big role in kind of finding the right contraception match. I know you mentioned like medical history, like PCOS?
PMS, yes,
PMS,
PCOS, like all of these things are
important. Yeah, I was going to ask, are there any other factors that you've seen that can play a role in, like whether it's side effect or some of these other things that kind of come with contraception, medical history, do things like lifestyle, like anything like age? Is there anything else that are these key drivers?
Absolutely. And I think it's genuinely just worth like explaining what we mean, because when we say personalization, because there's so many things these days that are personalized to you, like, your Instagram feed is personalized to you, but our interpretation is that personalization means making those clinical decisions for a patient based on all relevant factors. So not like everything and everything, but like what actually is relevant. And for contraception, it would mean like finding the right method from all of the different ones. And then within the method, finding the right dose and formulation, which is like a North Star. But then as you mentioned, talking about the relevant factors, you're completely right. So it's medical history is super important, especially like your menstrual health history of your periods, like whether you have PCOS, endometriosis, super important. So your like medical and biological factors, but actually like patients' values, lifestyle goals, like is super important. For example, like whether you want something that's short term, whether it's something that you can stop yourself, you want your periods or not, like it's completely individual. It's like some patients like they want them because, for example, they're athletes, and some patients find it like just really nice to actually have like a monthly reminder that they're not pregnant. So it's completely personalized. So I think it's just like really putting this all together from like the genetics gives you the risk scores and like the risk of adverse reactions, the risk of side effects, but then the rest of it is actually like just a holistic picture of the patient and what you want from contraception.
That's so fascinating. And also, quick question, because I'm so curious. You had mentioned dosage and how dosage plays a role too, which is really interesting. So, in the research and the work that you found, is it that there are specific like dosage thresholds that can result in more severe side effects for some folks?
That's what we're trying to discover of the data. There's things that we can definitely map out already in terms of if you develop a specific side effect on a specific dose, like what's next to do, like what's the best way to do next, switching medications. And this is the work that we've been doing with like reproductive endocrinologists. And actually the methods are like developed over time, which is really great to see. Like the third generation contraceptives, the pharmaceuticals like already optimize the dosing much better. But what's interesting is when you have a specific symptom that you want to treat, like the PCOS patients, for example, or like difficult periods, like finding the dose that's going to achieve what you want to achieve with treating the symptom at the same time as not causing you side effects. It's that like closing the loop. And we are seeing that things happening like that in like cardiovascular space when people are measuring blood pressure and then optimizing the dose to control the blood pressure without getting dizzy. And it's kind of the same what we need to do in contraception, but it's obviously a bit more tricky because there isn't like a one single thing that will say it's you have a contraception fit. It's like how you're feeling, is how are your symptoms, like it's a bit more complex than just measuring your blood pressure. But that's basically what I'm trying to do, like just kind of optimizing it to that level where it's like no side effects and optimal outcomes for you.
That is so incredible. Wow. I really love that there's so much attention that's being given to really finding that like perfect formula that's so individual. And I think, I mean, I would love if you could share a little bit more about just the broader vision behind Dama Health's initiatives. And I think, already you're demonstrating how the work that you're doing is just speaking to just, the broader improvement of health in general. But would love if you could share with us a little bit more about the vision that you see for Dama.
Yes, of course. So basically it's very bold, but we are visioning that like in the future, like most healthcare will be personalized to patients across all different industries and medicine, because it will just optimize the outcomes. And we need to get to a point where these interventions are like cost effective. So then we are seeing better outcomes, and actually those tests and treatments that we're administering are actually like cost effective, which means two things in the industry that need to happen. So the various tests, like biological tests, genetic tests, are getting cheaper, but also we need to start showing that those improved outcomes, actually following up with patients, like showing the impact on quality of life, on work, relationships, all of this as well. So this is just kind of like, if we think the vision that future of healthcare will be personalized, what do we do now to get that vision for women's health? Because that's very difficult because we don't have that much data. As we know, there's a big data gap in women's health. So that's what we're working on. And that's why we're being like a few years behind in terms of being able to do this, but baby steps. One day, like that's where we want to get to. Because basically, yeah, it's very simple vision of like better outcomes that kind of are more related to that value-based model that we're also trying to get to as well, and is slowly getting there. But I think we need to all like work towards creating solutions that one day when we have the future vision of value-based outcomes, value-based models, and personalized medicine, we are taking the steps right now to get there as well.
100%. It's really about like laying the foundation right now and the work that's being done. So I love that mentality too. And I think with, a lot of what you were talking about, really how this type of personalization, putting a lot of this intention and thought behind prescriptions and how, or whatever modality, how much it's, really changing lives of patients. I would also imagine that there's a lot of gains that kind of come on the provider side and those benefits there. Would love if you could share a little bit more about, how something like this is also a huge value prop for providers or clinicians.
Of course. And to be honest, this is how I got interested in the problem, because We were doing clinics that were like 10 minutes long with patients, and you can see that there's a struggle on both sides. Like the patients like cannot tell everything to their provider in those 10 minutes appointments, and you cannot explain all the options. That's how I got involved in this whole project at the beginning. And when we speak to providers, they really love the idea of like, I wish I could predict, which patients are going to get the side effects, irregular bleeding. That's really difficult, and really be able to manage the expectations better. So they really buy into that. Like it would be so amazing to be able to predict and get to the dose. But then we talk to them actually of like, so how is it now for you? Like, can we do anything better now? Like, how can we personalize the current status quo as well until we get to the level of a lot of data sets and predictions? And actually we realized like prescribing contraception is quite complex. And again, speaking as a physician, speaking to other physicians as well. So we basically realized that taking into account all those relevant factors takes a long time, because you have to think about all the guidelines, the medical history, like give the patient the space and time to think about their lifestyle preferences and all of that. And very often it happens like at the end of a manual, and it's like just impossible to tackle all of this in that consultation. So we started working with those OBGYNs and reproductive endocrinologists of building a platform that can actually be like a companion for these appointments. So it helps patients like with the personalization, doing the assessment of their needs, like help them really think about what you want as well from your contraception. And we work with clinical partners such as like gynecologists, nurse practitioners, primary care providers. They basically want to optimize the prescription of contraception for the patients, the experience for through the appointments as well, but also just provide the sort of expert level family planning, like endocrinologist level knowledge around contraception to patients as well. So it not only makes like the patients happier, like they differentiate themselves as clinicians in the clinics, but also the appointments are just like more efficient because the history taken is then upfront, and we do a bit of counseling upfront as well. So then when they go to see the provider, it's like very much, let's just choose the method together, like proper, like shared decision making, instead of just like trying quickly go through everything, like, and then it's so rushed. So we just allow them to like focus actually on what matters. So we are also like, so this is what we're doing right now with the platform. But actually, we're also thinking about like bigger opportunities and partnerships, because there's some systems that told us that actually they really care about standardization of care, and also maybe giving like nurse practitioners sort of ability to prescribe methods that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. So then there's less referrals as well to secondary care. And with the access issues, that could also be an interesting collaboration for us.
Totally. Wow, that's so. So I think some of the things that you're working on right now is providing more of that standardization, kind of even increasing scope of practice, which is really, really key, I think, especially when you're talking about the access issues. And I would imagine too, eliminating repeat visits, where you are able to like now have these more informed conversations, which I think is so important, because it's true, you don't want to be rushed to make this really important decision. So it's really nice that you not only give patients the space to have all of the information at hand, but you're making it a lot easier too for providers.
Exactly. And actually like contraception comes up in so many other problem visits and also like diagnostic visits, because people come in with like issues with their periods, but actually they may have underlying endometriosis or maybe PCOS. And very often that contraception is like actually like a very complex discussion that you have with the patient. So again, enable that early diagnostics of these patients to then get them on the right treatments, do the right investigations, and then optimize outcomes in the long term as well. It all goes in together actually, because we use contraception to treat these symptoms as well. So in our assessments, as we are collecting the data on patients and their past experience, we're actually also assessing, do they have any other needs that are potentially unaddressed, that, they will just get contraception, but we actually need to address these issues as well.
That is a very key point, because I think it is easy to forget that contraception is used as a solution for a lot of other conditions, not necessarily just for unwanted pregnancy, but there's so much other that falls within the realm. I'm even thinking too about like dermatology and like there's so much like rolls up into that too. So I would imagine like it can get a little bit convoluted to really address some of these deeper problems. So it's great that this type of solution allows for a lot of that space.
Thank you.
That is incredible. And also wanted to ask you a little bit more about some of the other partners that you're working with. I know you mentioned that there's so many, specialists that you're working with. Is there a role that like pharmaceutical companies are playing or involved with Dom in any capacity?
Yeah, so we're definitely thinking like that's where long term we can create a lot of value. Better, drugs, and maybe like tailoring the drugs to people. But actually, we're already starting working with pharmaceutical companies who are developing those new methods, because you can start like stratifying and identifying patients who are more likely to respond well to this specific method. So again, like get that trial and error like removed from the scratch, which can like help with the clinical trials as well. So basically they're trying to recruit patients that will respond well to these new methods that they're developing. And that's where we can help as well. And with time, as we have those new insights and data, as you were saying, in terms of the dosing, that can really like help industry players as well and pharmaceuticals as well. Because right now it's just data is missing.
Definitely. That is so incredible, and wanted to make sure that we save some time for questions that we're getting. I think we have some great questions coming in from our participants. So the first one is, how do people get involved with Dama as a birth control user?
So actually, we work with clinics. So to get to our platform and our tests, we have to go for clinical partners at the moment. We are thinking about expanding to maybe do something direct to consumer, but we basically did the research and thought, people do want to speak to their providers, and that's where you can access all types of methods. And if we were to set up a telepharmacy, we can only provide pills and patches and rings, and we want to make sure we actually offer everything and really think about all the different options and not exclude anything. So right now we're only available through clinical partners.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. And then we have another question that says, is the platform built yet? And are you selling this platform to all OBGYNs?
To OBGYNs, primary care practitioners, NPs, whoever is prescribing and offering contraception. And yes, it's ready for deployment.
Awesome. So, and I'm assuming all the information is on like a website of, who your partners are. So if there's anyone that is interested in using Dama, can kind of go through them if they have that.
To be honest, our website needs an update because we are currently fundraising, and we've been really focused on the fundraise and deployment of the platform in clinics. So definitely needs an update, but I'll give you my email, and obviously super happy to speak to like anyone interested in the space, clinical partners, industry partners. We'll also be hiring like summer onwards. So yeah, we'd love to just hear from anyone who's interested.
That's amazing. So I feel like for everyone that is interested in either becoming a Dama user or just being involved in Dama, we will have Paulina's LinkedIn in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to her to get any of your questions answered. So thank you so much. And Paulina also just put in her email into the chat as well, for anyone that's interested, which is amazing. I know we have about 5 minutes. So I really kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more about some of the things that you are just seeing being involved in the contraception space. I know that right now you're at a conference that's specifically dedicated to this issue. Is there anything that you're kind of seeing either through the conference or just your own experience that kind of excites you? Anything that's innovative or new that you're seeing as we continue to evolve, the contraception space?
Yes, thank you for this question. It's really exciting actually, because I think for a while there wasn't that much, and suddenly like in the last few years, a lot of like research has advanced enough so we can now really think about like, oh wow, it's gonna come to the market. So I'm in Boston right now at the Reproductive Health Innovation Summit, would definitely recommend. And there was a whole panel on contraception and innovation in the space. We are seeing novel methods that are both hormonal and non-hormonal for both female and males. And there is actually a trial going on, human trial in Australia on male contraception. And I think I'm really excited because at Dama, like we really feel strongly passionate about offering all options to people. And the moment we have male contraception, we can start getting involved couples in these decisions and actually having both of them go through the screening and the process of what is best for us as a couple as well. So very excited about this trial. And I think they're also publishing like a Valentine's blog today about like males and their like interest in using contraception. So I think it's a nice like day to read about that as well, which is really, very cool. But there's also things apart from novel methods, because that takes trials, there's also ways to deliver and administer methods with new medical devices. So for example, there's a new medical device that you can insert the IUD, the coil, in a way that is less painful. And this is a huge step as well, because that's a big barrier of why people are so scared of using the IUD. And the device is already like clinically proven to reduce the pain and bleeding of the procedure. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening.
That's very, very exciting. That's very cool. And nothing with new methods, but also just optimizing the current methods that we have too, which is always great to see. So
Exactly.
I love that. And now I kind of wanted to shift gears a little bit, Paulina, and kind of talk to you just as a co-founder and as an entrepreneur, for any folks who are listening right now that are really passionate about women's health and are maybe building something themselves, would love if you could share any, words of wisdom, any challenges that maybe you had as an early stage startup and kind of how you've overcome them. Just any and all insight as an entrepreneur would be so fascinating to hear.
Of course. I think honestly, it's like figuring things out all the time. And it's like a new challenge of the week. And you like building plane as you fly it as well. But it's very exciting. And I think for most of us, like we're here because we care. And I think that's one of the most important things when you work in women's health and in this space, that you're working on something that is like so aligned with your values and the vision that you have for the future of women's health. That it's like, it makes it so worth it. And every day is just basically like getting you closer to that vision, which is really great. And the challenge is, like we all know there's not enough data, there's not enough funding, but we can help each other out. I think in the industry of like, we want to create the market for this. We want to actually create proper like clinical grade, like proper technologies for women's health that will be sustainable and that will create that future that we're working towards, with those better clinical outcomes and that value-based future as well. So we need to, I think, create partnerships and really help each other in this industry to really make it happen.
I mean, what a beautiful way to end our conversation, is really speaking to the power of community and partnerships and bringing each other along for the ride. So I really think that is so powerful and so needed.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, really great initiative that you speak to founders and you talk about initiatives like this every week, so that we can all support each other and all know about each other. So yeah, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn, my email, whatever works. We'd love to speak to anyone who's interested in the space of personalized contraception and personalized prescribing in female health in general.
Thank you so much, Paulina. And we're all so excited. We definitely should do a part two, kind of when you're in your next phase of, fresh funding, all these new opportunities going on. So we're all rooting for you, and so excited to see Dama continue to grow and evolve and, change lives.
Thank you so much. Yeah, keep your fingers crossed.
We got you. Thank you so much, Paulina.